So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining today. This is the third in our series on innovative law firms and spotlights of several different law firms related to the use of AI and technology. Today we'll be focused on IP. We are have a couple of folks on the line for you to hear more about what they are doing within their firms when it comes to IP. One firm, McCarthy's, will talk to us a little bit more with a litigation focus, and the other firm, Pinsent Mason's, more on the portfolio management side. My name is Catherine Schell. I'm a member of the AdvanceLaw team, and I help run our outside counsel transformation, where we build panels and other, law firm engagement strategies with specific clients. I'm so excited to hear from these gentlemen today. I know that they've got a lot to share with us, but we're going to kick this off actually with a poll. So if everybody would get ready, a screen's going to appear in just a second. How many of you have had conversations with your law firms about the use of AI in your legal work? So let us know if you have, let us know if you sort of have, or if you haven't yet. We're really looking forward to seeing the results here. A couple of housekeeping things while I let you respond. We'll be using both our chat as well as our Q&A function today for questions for our panelists. If you've got a question, please speak up using that chat function or the Q&A option. If we can't get to your question during the conversation today, then we'll be sure to follow up afterwards. But we're looking forward to hearing what questions you have for these firms about using AI within the IP space. So results from the poll, a lot of you have, about 30% of you have actually had conversations with law firms. A lot of you haven't. Hopefully this will give you some questions to take back to your firms. Some of you are somewhere in between. Maybe you'll get some ideas here too. So thank you for responding. We do surveys from time to time, not just as part of these webinars, but also in other contexts. And we're always interested in hearing from you about what questions you want to be asking law firms. So please ask away today or reach out to me separately offline. Today, as I mentioned, we're joined by two different firms. You'll hear from them in just a second. From McCarthy's, we have Sanjaya and Vincent. And from Pinsent Mason's, we have Florian and Tom. And they're very excited to share what they've been doing within the IP space for their clients. A lot of conversations around AI have focused on what AI is going to be able to do for us in 2, 3, or 5 years. Today, we're going to get to hear about what AI has already been doing for these folks and for their clients as well. So I'm really excited about that conversation. Before we get into it, as I mentioned, AdvanceLaw conducts a number of surveys where we ask law firms what they're doing, what they're planning on doing when it comes to things like AI, innovation, and their clients. And what we've seen over the last couple of years is that innovation is increasingly shifting to client-facing work. A lot of early innovation was more around what I might call the firm infrastructure, or things that made the law firm partners' lives easier. And now what we're seeing is that law firms are very, very focused on making their clients' lives easier, which is something that I very much like to see. So that's one of the reasons why we wanted to bring this to you today. We wanted to share examples of that client-facing work so that you could hear about how AI has changed it over the last couple of years. We also asked firms how AI is going to impact how they compete on various different attributes: quality, cost, and speed. And what you see here, if we start at the right-hand side of the page, is pretty much everybody agrees that AI is going to make us faster. Most people also agree that AI is ultimately going to make the cost of legal work cheaper. And then there's a little bit more disagreement, although not that much, on whether AI will improve the quality of the legal work that law firms are able to give to their clients. So law firms overall are very, very bullish on how AI will have a positive impact on how firms compete, particularly as it compares to firms that maybe aren't quite as competitive in this space. We've asked about what practice areas firms expect to have the biggest gains, what impacts those will look like, and how they're most often using AI. And IP is one of the top 4. We've also asked a number of questions around the specific impacts within the legal industry, faster turnaround time. We see that from firms expecting the work to be, in your hands faster, but also things like associate productivity and more non-hourly work. Most often, people are using AI today for things like legal research, document review, document drafting, and due diligence. We're going to hear even more examples here today. So I am first going to turn it over to the McCarthy's team in just 1 minute. But before that, a really quick story on how I feel like we should all think about AI. Some of you may have seen the movie Here. That was a movie that Tom Hanks and Robin Wright were in and came out at the end, towards the end of last year. And there's been a lot of articles about how this movie couldn't even exist if it weren't for AI, because the characters actually go from being teenagers in the top to over 80 in the bottom. And Tom Hanks, at least, is pretty bullish that AI is not going to replace him. He views this very much as a tool for cinema, as something that will allow people to create movies that really couldn't have been created without the use of AI. And what we also see and hear in these stories is that the people who understand AI the best, those who had actually worked with it, continue to have the most faith in human creativity and the most skepticism about AI supplanting that. I think that's a really interesting perspective. I'm sure we'll hear similar things from our experts on the line today. But I think that that's who we should be hearing from, right? The experts who know what AI can do and what it can't do, and who've really been there and on the front line with the clients. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the McCarthy team, who will talk to us about AI tools supporting patent and trademark and other types of IP litigation practices.
Thank you, Catherine, for the introduction, and thank you everyone who's attending today. I'll start with a brief introduction and then an overview of where my partner Vincent and I will go today. So just by way of introduction, my name is Sanjay Mendes. I'm a partner here at McCarthy Tetrault in the IP litigation group. I practice primarily in IP litigation with a focus on life sciences, patents, and trademarks and copyright. In terms of our firm, we've embedded a number of AI tools to really support our practice. It runs the gamut from helping us organize ourselves as well as to file support, which will be the substance of our discussion. We'll focus primarily on how AI is helping with our patent and trademark prosecution, as well as some of our IP litigation activities. And so with that, we can go to the next slide and I'll turn over to Vincent.
Thanks, Sanjay. So my name is Vincent and I'm a lawyer at McCarthy's and I practice in patent and trademark prosecution. And so in the first slide, so we're talking a little bit about sort of how we use AI tools as part of our patent prosecution practice. So we have a very significant sort of direct client practice, which requires direct client patent drafting. And so we've been using AI tools to help with the patent drafting at more of a mechanical level. So things like making sure parts are labeled properly, prior art summaries in the background section, helping to look at prior art from just sort of summarizing this and screening out things that are relevant or irrelevant, ensuring consistent language across the specification and drawings. And those are important things for those who are in the patent drafting space. That consistent language is very important. So that's the AI tools we've used have been helpful in that regard to help make the work product better and more efficient and faster sort of drafting speed. We've tried some of the tools out there that does automated claims drafting. They usually are somewhat helpful to sort of at the beginning standpoint for claims drafting, but ultimately still requires a lot more review and revisions by the patent attorneys, looking at the claims and thinking through claim scope, thinking through issues around novelty and obviousness. In our experience, the substantive thinking work around patent drafting still needs to be done by a patent attorney. The AI tools is not there to replace us yet. When you're drafting claims and thinking for issues around licensing, third-party infringement, how to catch potential competitors, those things are not quite there yet for the AI tools. The AI tools, again, it's helpful to provide us with a baseline to work from, but not when you get this more bespoke thinking around things. We've also tried some of the AI-assisted patent search tools, and we've seen some efficiencies and speed of getting sort of relevant results. And sort of various vendors have provided those type of more sophisticated databases or better equipped AI assisted searches. So those have been helpful in the practice. And then sort of lastly, sort of on the screening of patent documents. So AI's tools are helpful to sort of summarize documents, etc. But sometimes they're helpful to to help screen out things that are irrelevant. A lot of times, patent documents, when there's a huge volume of them, it's really good to just be able to screen off and find things that, these ones look like they may be relevant, but actually not. But at the end of the day, though, the AI tools aren't necessarily perfect. And so you've got to be very careful in terms of, missing things that might be important. So you need to go back and just double check things instead of being overly reliant on the AI tools. Just an example here in British Columbia and Canada here, there was someone that actually used AI tools to generate factum with false citations. And actually the person was charged with improper conduct by the Law Society as a result. And so those issues come up even on patent side when you're on the patent drafting and things are being made up because the AI tool just for whatever reason, because it's database or the models that's learning from, generate something that actually isn't true, and that becomes a problem. So that's why ultimately the work product still needs to be vetted carefully by the patent attorney. So I'll turn it to Sanjaya to talk a bit about how we've been using the AI tools in our litigation practice.
We can go to the next slide. So I'll just talk generally about a few buckets or categories in our practice where AI is being used. We have a partnership with a large AI vendor as well as and we're trialing an AI tool that's been developed solely for litigation. And so one obvious area to deploy AI is fact discovery, fact depositions. Anyone involved in litigation will know that that is resource extensive, takes time. Like in the US and Canada, there are broad document discovery obligations, which then leads to lengthy depositions. And so from the client side, that is an expensive area of litigation. It's a time-intensive process as well. And we've been looking at ways to really streamline the discovery, really reduce the resource burn, and ultimately the expense of it. So a couple of ways we've been using it. Number one, AI we found is pretty effective in doing tasks that require high output, high review. And if we're preparing for a deposition, for example, we've used it to identify key documents that we can then prepare a witness for, or conversely, that we can then ask the other side about. Where the magic, I think it is the prompts you give the AI. So you can't say, or it's not effective in our experience to say, hey, can you find important documents for the discovery or deposition of X? The prompts have to be developed to really be specific to say, I'd like to see documents on X topic from this time frame that touch on Y. And the more specific the prompt, the better output from the AI. Otherwise, generic prompts we find actually sometimes lead to more work from us. And so there is magic then to developing the right prompts for the AI tool to then ultimately help you.
Can you just maybe elaborate a little bit on that? Because I've heard a lot about prompt engineer training and how important it is. And how did you learn and how do you get better? And what advice would you have for in-house folks who are maybe facing this for the first time?
It's a good question. So we have, frankly, AI consultants that are hired by this firm specifically to engineer, trial, and deploy AI within our national firm platform. And so, frankly, us lawyers look to those AI experts to help train us. And a lot of it is frankly trial and error from them. And we closely collaborate because they don't really know the application we want to use it for. And so we will say things like, we want to do X, Y, Z, and they will come up with the prompts to then to generate that output. And so I do think it's an important point. It's important to have an expert on the AI side that can help, because if you just start playing with the AI, frankly, sometimes you just kind of get lost in the weeds. That's a good point. Just keeping with the discovery in Canada, we have something called an undertaking chart. There's similar concept, I think, in the US with interrogatories, but in the course of a deposition in Canada, we might agree to answer a number of questions. And in the old days, quote unquote, we'd have a paralegal that leafs through hundreds of pages of transcripts to identify the questions which we've agreed to now answer. And that leads to generation of a table that we'll then populate. And so that was a time-intensive process because it required a human to review and read hundreds of pages of transcripts, prepare a table, etc. And we've now deployed AI to functionally do that. And their first drafts, the AI's first drafts, have been fairly accurate. To Vincent's point, we still obviously have human review to make sure it's accurate. But in our experience, a task like that, reviewing a transcript, prompting it to look for areas where we've agreed to answer, AI's done a pretty good job for us of doing that. Continuing on, another area that us litigators for trial purposes do is if there are experts who are testifying on complex scientific or technological aspects, a big part of a lawyer's job is cross-examination. And frequently we will scour the internet, we'll scour prior publications to look for cross-examination fodder, inconsistent statements, etc. And again, in the old days, that'd be a human doing it. We have a research team, a lot of firms do, that'll help in that search. But again, with AI, with specific prompts, AI can review those publications, in a matter of minutes. And again, the prompts are where the magic is. It has to be specific prompts. The AI, in our experience, hasn't really been able to generate something like cross-examination questions. You can't give it an inquiry like, please find something inconsistent with this expert report. It's really, you need to pinpoint the issues you want to track down, ask for a summary, and then it ultimately falls on the lawyer to develop the cross-examination transcript. Next is case law research. Vincent alluded to this, but you'll have seen that in case law research, it's called a hallucination. The AI will sometimes hallucinate a case, make up a case. There's been sanctions, frankly, on both sides of the board on lawyers who've submitted materials to court with effectively made up case citations. And again, we haven't seen the case law research been that powerful yet for that reason. Particularly in IP, it's a very nuanced body of law. It's not simple is the wrong word, but something like tort law, which has been around for the 1900s, I'd say have fairly established principles where maybe the research is a bit better. But for patents, trademarks, copyright, there's a lot of statutory interpretation. The cases develop, there's sometimes inconsistencies, and in our experience, the AI has not been or is not sufficiently powerful yet to really navigate such a complex and nuanced body of law. But if you're looking as a starting point, you're looking for maybe a archaic case, something like that. We've had some success where it points us in the right direction. But again, I'd say of the things we're using AI for, case law research, factum drafting is probably lower on the list. That brings me to writing. So again, factum writing, where we're now presenting arguments to the court. Again, not super powerful, but where we've sometimes used it is to help with making things simpler, existing drafts to make it simpler, more concise, etc. So it has some suggestions where you might have tunnel vision on a particular argument, and you give the AI an alternative take on it. And sometimes it presents ideas that you can then implement as a lawyer into the draft. Finally, graphic creations. We haven't touched on this yet, but it's sort of a prospective use case we're looking at. I think as everyone knows now, both Gemini, both Copilot have tools where the AI will generate images. And particularly for trial presentation, for lay judges, for lay jurors, graphics are always helpful. And even when we're presenting witnesses in court, we frequently use PowerPoint presentations. And so there is now applications, for example, in Copilot, where you can feed it a document and the AI will prepare a PowerPoint automatically with graphics that it itself generates. So again, I would say it's still in its early stages, but I think that will be a powerful application for creating visuals, for creating PowerPoint presentations that we frankly did not have until now. So those are the primary applications that we're using AI in litigation.
So I think you touched on this a little bit, but some of the aspects of this are kind of true of broad litigation, right? The use of discovery support and creating PowerPoints and things like that. What are some of the more IP specific aspects of this that are really unique and really helpful when you've got a big piece of IP litigation?
Yeah, I'd say I'm not sure there's anything unique, frankly, to IP. I think where IP is sometimes different is on things like discovery, there's just a ton more documents. The documents tend to be highly technical in nature compared to, for example, let's say a personal injury firm. And so sometimes the review of that documentation requires specialized expertise, the use of independent experts. And AI, having been trained on these technical aspects, can sometimes perform in the same way as someone of a human expert. And so that reduces then sometimes the need for specialized expertise.
I know we've got one more slide on the trademark support as well. But one other question that I had for both you and for Vincent is, how do you keep up with all the changes within what AI can do? For example, it's not quite there when it comes to case law research for you for IP. How do you figure out when it is there? And how much time do you spend on educating yourself about what's out there in the market?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I rely on our in-house AI team, and so they are specifically charged with exactly that, keeping up in advances, forging partnerships where we're actually providing feedback back to the vendors directly to help improve the tools for our use. And ultimately, I think a lot of big firms have now AI experts for that exact purpose.
Yeah, and I agree with Sanjay's point. Like, I mean, really, it's working with the internal tech team hand in hand, get an understanding of sort of what's available, what's the capability, 6 months ago versus now, and actually just, trying it out and giving it a shot and having sort of the associates trying it out and seeing sort of what the results are. I mean, nothing really beats trying it out day to day, see if it works or not. So next slide, please.
Right.
So I'll talk briefly sort of on the trademark side, and our colleagues and friends at Pinsent Masons will have more on this topic. On the trademark support, we've been using sort of AI assisted tools, mostly around classification of goods and services. So as some of you may know, Canada joined the Madrid Protocol back in 2019. As a result, every single trademark registration on the register now has to undergo classification at renewal. And so it's a huge undertaking because every single time a case comes up for renewal, we have to do classification for all the goods and services. And traditionally, Canadian practice has been because of no classification, people have been very creative in terms of their drafting of goods and services for Canadian trademark registrations. And so the tool that we're using allows even assistants to do a first cut of those classifications so that the professionals can take a look at it and, tweak as needed. The volume of classification requests is quite high as a result of the change. And so that's definitely been a very helpful part in our practice. We've also used AI-assisted trademark search tools, which have been helpful to improve search efficiencies and finding the right results or the most relevant results a bit quicker.
Thank you.
And that,
Yeah, please.
yeah, that's it on from Ryan.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We're going to turn it over to the Pinsent Masons team now, but we'll be coming back, I'm sure, with some questions. And again, if you've got any questions, please submit them using the chat and the Q&A function. But Florian, Tom, please take it away.
Thank you. I take it first, Catherine. Thank you very much. My name is Florian Traub. I'm a partner here at Pinsent Masons London office in the intellectual property team. My focus is really on the full life cycle of a brand or a trademark. Although when it goes to litigation, so anything that goes to court, I hand over to Tom, who's very much focusing on the contentious and litigation side of things. We are both sort of co-heading our brands team here at Pinsent Masons. Now, spoiler alert, just circling back, Catherine, what you said about Tom Hanks, I just don't think that I'm going to be replaced by AI anytime soon. So bear with me. I think we can all agree on that. But if you go to the next slide, Catherine, we want to talk to you about a particular tool that we have developed, which we call Alteria. But before I just go to that, just to say, Pinsent Masons is a full-service law firm in the UK and across Europe. And we have a lot of innovative tools that we have deployed and developed for our clients, some of which are just sort of white-labeled in from external vendors, some of which we have developed ourselves. So this is just a snapshot of what we want to talk about, Tom and myself, this product, this platform that we have developed, which we call Alteria, and which has something to do with the brand management and brand monitoring and enforcement. So just imagine that scenario, that more historic scenario, I hope, and I hasten to say, that a lot of in-house counsel are dealing with long Excel spreadsheets, a lot of data, a lot of back and forth with emails and the outside provider. And all of that seems to be a little bit dated. So we went out to develop this tool to make use of the new technology, also around AI, and I come to that in a moment, but to basically address 3 points. First of all, make the administration of large trademark portfolios and design portfolios easier, therefore more efficient and also more cost efficient. But also make sure that our clients are actually aware of what third parties are thinking about their brands in the online space. And then thirdly, make sure that they have all these wonderful assets, trademark designs, also patents, but they also have an ability to effectively enforce them in the online world by taking down unauthorized listings or trademark infringements. And that's all in the online space. But of course, there's also a brick and mortar, an offline space where we then take some of these cases to the courts and go after the most difficult or the most pertinent infringers and take this then to litigation. So this is basically the tool. And Catherine, if you go to the next slide, it gives us a bit of the overview, which Tom and I want to talk about. 3 components: Alteria portfolio, Alteria enforce, and Alteria reputation. And just by way of overview, it says what it says on the tin. Alteria portfolio is the element where we make the management of a trademark and design portfolio more efficient. We provided the clients with access to their data, and I will show this in just a moment. Alteria Enforce is the tool where we are monitoring the use of our clients' brands in the online space, particularly on marketplaces, but also in social media and websites, and have tools to take down using AI. And the third element is Iteria reputation, where we basically monitor the reputation of our clients' brands. So let's dive in a little bit more and show how this works in practice. Catherine, if you go to the next slide, and whilst you're doing this, I just mentioned that we launched Iteria a couple of years ago, a few years ago, but we have last year moved to a new platform which is more powerful and enables us to do more for our clients. So we have copied here some screen prints from the platform. That gives you a little bit of an impression how this would work in practice. Appreciate that's very small. It's not about the details, but it just gives you sort of the impression on what our clients can see. So the first component I'm talking about is the portfolio management system. It gives our clients access to of their trademark and designs. All of that can be customized. So the view that you can see here is just a view that I have prepared for myself. But if a particular user wants to see different data, there are very many different data points, and all of these columns can be filtered, can be searched, and so on. This is just a way of actually having access to the data in a more efficient and sophisticated way. It's very intuitive, but it also enables our clients to run reports from the data and statistics. And there are lots of reporting tools that make hopefully in-house the life of an in-house counsel easier in terms of reporting to their internal stakeholders. But that's not everything. When we go into the records themselves, it gives you all the data and all the details of a trademark registration, also the history. But I also want to talk a little bit about how we are deploying AI to help us with the management and the prosecution of a trademark a little bit more. Vincent also already touched upon a number of the aspects regarding the drafting of specifications of goods and services. I'm not going to repeat that. The one element that I want to talk about is really the element of actually using AI to analyze and docket incoming office actions from trademark offices. So we all know that we have a lot of these actions coming in on a day-to-day basis. Some are in English, some are in a foreign language. The tool that we're using here and the AI component of it is in a position to not only translate, but also to read the office action, determine what the deadline, the response deadline is, then proposes a deadline to our paralegal team, who can then docket the deadline in the system semi-automatically. Of course, they will check it, but then it also then summarizes the office action in a proposed report to a client. So you can see all these steps are much more efficient and save us a lot of time, and therefore our clients' money, in actually dealing with these office actions and cutting down the time it takes to turn these things around. And yeah, that goes to the statistics that Catherine showed at the beginning, where we are addressing the turnaround time and the cost, and perhaps also the quality, because we can rely on some translation tools that are out there. So that's one area to deploy AI, but the AI also helps us to audit these portfolios in a more efficient way. We can determine whether there are any gaps, whether there are any discrepancies. There's a certain overlap with available data from trademark offices. Not all trademark offices are offering these kinds of APIs at the moment, but there's certainly a possibility to link in with some of the Western trademark offices to determine any discrepancies. The other element that I want to talk about is really the overview of the cost and the maintenance of a trademark portfolio. Feedback from our client is really always saying, like, how much does it cost us to maintain a trademark portfolio? Can you tell us what the budget is for next year? So we have integrated a lot of data points, taking into account office actions for renewals, for example, but also costs of our foreign agents and, of course, our own negotiated costs with our clients. And all of that enables us to provide an automated cost prediction for the upcoming months or the upcoming years, up to 10 years, in fact, on the basis of today's costs. And we can run all sorts of statistics on that. So again, it's just providing the means and the tools for our clients to have a better access and experience with the management of their trademark portfolio. Clients can also give us instructions, for example, can instruct us to renew a certain trademark, and all of that is powered by the tech that you can see in front of us. There's one final aspect before I turn over to Tom that I want to mention. That's the trademark watching analysis and service. We have, in fact, integrated that service into the platform, meaning that the trademark watches are shown on the platform, but at the same time, the tech pulls in the relevant trademark that is the client's trademark, so that the client or paralegals can compare the trademark watch notice as it came in with the existing trademark, and then highlights the overlap in terms of the specification of goods and services, which makes it very quick and more efficient to review these trademark watches or as and when they come in. I want to pause here. I don't know if Catherine, whether you had any comments or questions. Otherwise, I'll hand over to Tom.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions and then we can hand it over to Tom. So the first one is, talk us through the upfront time investment for an in-house team. If they are working off of a different, system for portfolio management, or if they're working off of an Excel file, what's the effort like to get all their information onto the system, and and then how much does that save them the next time or something like that? Because I know that sometimes you have these switching costs that can be kind of hard to fathom.
Yeah, that's a good point. We do not normally charge for the transition of a portfolio into the system. If the data, the incoming data from the incumbent firm is available on an API link, or perhaps even on an Excel spreadsheet with the relevant data relatively clean, then we can upload the data from such sources onto the platform, and the transition is relatively quick. Having said that, we are working on solutions where we can actually upload the data by reference to the public and official databases using a subscription database. So basically, it refers to the public data as opposed to the data that comes from the incumbent firm. And that has certain advantages. For example, the data should be clean and should be up to date, and it also avoids any errors in uploading. You asked how long does it take, how much upfront investment is there to make. It depends on the size of the portfolio. It depends on the work involved in auditing and making sure that the data is clean. But we have a lot of experience in transitioning these portfolios, and we really strive to make it a smooth process and painless process.
Well, thank you, Florian. Tom.
Thank you. I hand over to Tom to talk
Thanks,
more about
Florian.
the. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Catherine. I think we can move to the next slide, Catherine, if that's okay. So as Florian said, I co-head the brands group here with Florian, and I focus on litigation. So the two bits of Altiria I'll deal with is IP enforcement online under Altiria Enforce, you can see on screen, and then reputation management as well. And I think the common thread throughout each of the speakers today, when we talk about where AI is currently used best, is when you're dealing with large data sets, whether that's scrape data, whether that's documents, to really speed up the efficiency of dealing with that data, consuming that information, and then presenting it. And I think this example here neatly ties in where that can really work for people. So Altiria Enforce searches 3 key places online. So marketplaces, websites, social media. It pulls those results into a portal. That's nothing new. So if we pause there for a second and think about how that's been done historically by big tech providers in the industry, you would have had a human in charge of the searching. You would have had some human analysis of the searching results. So they'd use a scraping tool, but then you'd go back to human analysis. Humans would present the data and have to check the data, which takes quite a lot of time. And then a human would make a decision as to whether you enforce and take down whatever result you found. So a lot of human emphasis in that process. The result has been often costs very high, if that's for the service, but also the burden on a client or a burden on a provider is quite high as well in terms of human involvement. So it's quite an inefficient process that you go through. Where it's now evolved to, and this is how it operates in this system, is that yes, you have a human who's still overall responsible for the search process, and they will input specific instructions as to what should be searched. And you do have to be quite targeted and specific, as Sanjay has said, with all of these kind of AI models. AI will then search in conjunction with a scraping tool and pull in data. So that bit becomes more efficient immediately. What then happens to the data is that the human has set and taught the AI model a particular criteria for your business. So again, being very specific as to what would be a big problem, what would be a medium risk problem, what would be a low risk problem. And that's where the AI has come into its own, because it can categorize results in those different categorizations and then present it to the user, whether that be a lawyer or whether that be someone in-house or a member of the business, in a much more efficient way. So that process is better. Human then has to make a decision. And this is why at the moment, humans can't be replaced in this process as to whether enforcement takes place against that particular listing. What happens next is that you've got a lot of data about a lot of listings. And as you see on the screen, it's presented with screenshots and some descriptors. But what you can use AI to do is then say, well, analyze that data and pull some key information for me into a report. And that key information could be, I need to know who my worst offenders are. Right? How do I get that information? Well, I need certain data points to be analyzed quickly on a number of different sources. Think of someone who sells something on social media, Amazon, a marketplace, and has their own website. And who's doing the analysis of those different data points and combining that information for you? That's where AI comes into its own. And then how do I present that and produce a nice visual report, as the guy said earlier about the sort of graphics that can be produced for the courtroom? Well, how can I quickly produce reports for the business which demonstrate the return on investment in this sort of process and the work that a person's doing in-house? AI can help with that process as well. So you see immediately through that operational process where AI working in conjunction with human can really create efficiencies and make it much more effective than it's ever been before. And as a result, enable the person in-house or the lawyer dealing with it really focus their attention on the worst offenders. So you move away from oh my God, I'm drowning in data, and it's a bit of a whack-a-mole approach to dealing with problems, to a much more effective strategy for dealing with issues in the business. And that helps the business actually truly come up with solutions to problems. So that's the IP enforcement side of this. The last bit that AI helps with when we do it is because the portfolio information sits in the same portal, it can cross-check listings against portfolio information to then say, do you have any gaps? Okay, have you got any gaps in your registration portfolio, which is preventing you from dealing with certain problems? Present that answer to me. So again, it's giving you intel, which yes, you could get manually, but it would take a lot longer to find that information out. And then Catherine, if you just move on to the last slide. This is around reputation management, and it works in a similar way, so I won't talk through the whole operational process. similar principles in terms of what AI can help with, but you're searching for different types of information. And that could be risk of a mass claim. If you face that sort of risk globally, that could be changes in the law that you need to check. That could be consumer reaction to your product in Canada or consumer reaction in Europe to a particular issue, and then reporting on that data and really consuming lots of different data points within platforms, whether it be reach of a post, whether it be comments, certain emojis used. And it enables a business to consume large data sets and actually make useful decisions as a result of it. And that's where the magic is for how it can be used.
Thank you, Tom. Very, very helpful. You talked at the beginning about the human element in terms of where it used to be, and I was struck by the reality that there had to be a lot of human error in transferring data from all of those different places.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah,
is that right? Like
have,
this would cut down on that human error?
You'd have a human error in terms of all of the data that's put into the system. So each listing could have some errors. The other issue you'd have, and anyone who's used these sort of systems, I think would testify to this, you get a tsunami of information because on the human side, they're very cautious then not to make an error or to miss something out. As a result, you get too much data that you then have to deal with. So not only do you get some errors on an individual level, the behavior to try and correct that tends to be just to throw mountains of data at the business or the law firm who are using that system. And that's not helpful to anyone.
Yeah. So fewer individual errors, more manageable sets of data, and better insights, ultimately.
Yeah, and it enables a client to make more effective decisions to deal with a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, whether that be a PR risk and really understand is it a risk rather than a perception of, oh, I think a lot of people are talking about this online in a particular echo chamber, or if it's okay, actually we've got 900, infringements we've found. If you look at the data, it's coming from about 5 companies. Well, let's just use our spend to deal with those 5 companies, and this will be the return on investment business that you'll have if we spend our money in the right way. So it enables that effective decision making, better use of time and money for people. That's a win-win.
It's a win-win. That's awesome. I love ending this on a win-win. We're almost at the end of this hour, which means that I will start with the gentleman from McCarthy's, and then we'll go back to Pinsent Masons to hear a little bit about what's next when it comes to innovation and IP. In just a minute, coming up on your screen, you'll have the opportunity to share with us whether or not you'd like to meet some more innovative and forward-thinking law firms. So please feel free to respond to that. But let's go back to Sanjaya and Vincent to hear, what do you think is next? What's on the horizon?
I can lead off. Someone made a joke to me the other day, but it may not be a joke, which is, why don't we just have AI try our cases? And it sounded funny, but one interesting angle to that is it's common knowledge that lawyers, parties sometimes will forum shop for a judge that may see the case in the way that they do. And that is, frankly, I'll admit, a weakness of our system, which is humans try our cases, and humans unwittingly or intentionally bring their own biases, bring their own experience to these cases. And so that leads to sometimes inconsistent decisions. For lawyers, it sometimes leads to you winning cases you didn't think you'd win and then losing cases you thought you were going to win. And so that thought experiment of removing bias from our disputes is interesting. It could be in the future, wouldn't be great for us. But I think that is something that people are thinking about. That's sort of a long-term thing. I think in the near term, it'll be an improvement of the various things we've talked about. One deficiency that remains is legal research, and there still needs to be a large human element to that. Another element of litigation is creativity in developing arguments, and the common phrase is developing something from nothing. And I don't believe AI has that creativity, and that's sort of a plug for the lawyers in this room, but that is something that is needed in a courtroom, that is needed to develop a case theory. So I still think there needs to be human element in that, but I know that, and I've heard discussions that developers are trying to introduce that sort of creative je ne sais quoi type arguments that humans can develop that AI can. I'll pause there.
Yeah, and on the prosecution side, I think it, you know, what Florian's doing with their platform is a lot more automation. With regards to correspondence with the office, just much more embedded workflow with AI tools, sort of across the board, including sort of clerks, assistants, paralegals, associates, everybody. Like, just it's not like a special thing anymore. It's just a part of what you're doing every day, and that should help with efficiency, especially in the IP practice where volume is a problem that we all deal with. A lot of cases, administrative burden that requires a lot of staff. That can help with these AI tools to sort of improve things, that improve from a cost perspective for clients.
That's great. That's helpful. Tom and Florian, what are your thoughts? What's coming next?
So, just I think from an industry perspective, I think some of the comments we've both made on this will grow, is you'll see firms hiring more AI specialists, getting bigger tech teams, and you'll see law firms evolving much more into professional services firms and clients actually interacting with not just the lawyers directly at these firms. So I think that'll be a fundamental shift in how delivery of services happen. And IP will be at the forefront of that because AI has a lot of use in both the prosecution and the enforcement area of it. And then I also think you'll have one of the nuances of IP law is you often have lots of multi-jurisdictional cases, right, where you're having to deal with IP rights in lots of different countries, and there has to be a coordination. And tech will help firms deliver that, different firms to collaborate better for clients in that sort of space. So you'll probably see buying decisions based on, well, what platform do you guys use? Can this other firm use that in this other country? So you'll see much more collaboration around platforms because of the ease of use for clients, as opposed to saying, this is my favorite law in this jurisdiction, this is my favorite lawyer here. So the buying decision will switch for law firms. So you'll see that grow. Florian, anything to add?
Yeah, maybe just a comment, and I won't repeat a lot what all the other three have said, but just a comment that innovation will undoubtedly continue. This is, I mean, we are all working with creative industries in the IP world, and we will be at the forefront of innovation. But I would say that whatever is the talk about AI replacing humans and being a threat to the workforce, I would see this a little bit more positively. Yes, there might be some shifting in terms of the workforce responsibilities and so on, but what I see AI and all the tech development doing positively is really to free up time for us to be more creative and actually to focus on what really matters, because we have all too much admin at our hand, and AI will help us addressing that admin and focus on what is really required.
I could not agree with you more. I always think about the Charles Dickens type of lawyer writing and copying things by candlelight and how far we've come since then. And, the world is our oyster in terms of where we can take this next. So thank you to all of you for sharing your expertise and insights with the group on the line. If you do have any other questions for either McCarthy's or Pinsent Masons, please let me know. I will get you to your next meeting just a couple of minutes early. But in case it's helpful or you have any questions, AdvanceLaw is part of the Mitratech platform. If you have any matter management or e-billing needs, you can always reach out to us and we're happy to talk about those. We also have an upcoming event in Dallas this spring. We're back. We're going big. We've got a lot planned. If you or any of your colleagues are interested in learning more, please let us know. But thank you, everyone, for your time today. Thank you to our wonderful panelists for all that you've shared, and I hope everybody has a great afternoon.